Hello everyone, my name is Sue. Welcome to my True Crime channel. Today we're diving into a gripping tale that turns a vibrant college campus into a scene of horror. It was October 1985 and 18-year-old Stacy Pannell was just beginning her journey into adulthood. But when she returned from a night of fun, her life would end in a shocking tragedy that would leave everyone reeling. Join me as we uncover the eerie details of this unsolved mystery and explore the chilling events that changed the community forever. Let's take a look. An 18-year-old freshman was about to confront a horrifying reality that would haunt her forever.
I freaked out. But then I thought, what if someone's out there? They're going to hurt me. I went to the friends upstairs. I banged on the door and I told them that someone killed her.
After a night at a campus party, she returned to her dorm to find her roommate Stacy Pannell lying lifeless on the bed.
Her top had been pulled up and her underwear had been pulled down, so your gut feeling is that it was sexual assault.
It was a gruesome scene with blood spattered across the room and chilling evidence left behind. A case so shocking that it baffled even the detectives tasked with solving it. Then a shocking interview soon revealed a detail only the killer could have known.
Her behavior changed. All of a sudden, there was a little red flag. Oh, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
But when justice seemed within reach, the case only deepened in mystery. October the 8th, 1985, at around 2:30 a.m., police arrived at a disturbing scene. 18-year-old Stacy Pannell lay lifeless on the bed, her left leg resting on the bed and her right foot on the floor.
Stacy Pannell's body was from her top down. There was a pair of panties around one leg. There was blood around her head and on the bed, on the headboard.
The scene was more than just a crime. It was a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. A pillow was placed over her head and she had sustained severe injuries to the left side of her head. Blood was extensively spread throughout the room, staining the walls and ceiling and even reaching up to 9 feet away from the body.
There was a tremendous amount of blood on the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. Her purse was still in there. There was nothing taken, so we kind of ruled out robbery.
A drawer rifle wrapped in a towel with blood on the stock was found on the floor. What investigators found next would only deepen the mystery surrounding Stacy's tragic end.
Someone had broke in to her room close to the head of her bed. It was a small screened window, and it was missing a piece of screen. It had been cut.
Investigators noted this detail alongside the discovery of the wooden rifle which Stacy used in parades with the marching band, now covered in blood. It appeared to be the murder weapon.
One rifle, which was lying on the floor. It had a lot of blood on the stock, which appeared to be smeared, and around the barrel was a towel.
Forensic experts quickly began to question the scene. The hole they noticed in the mosquito netting of Stacy's room was too small for an adult to pass through, and the height of the window from the ground presented additional challenges. The more they uncovered, the more this crime seemed to defy logic. Moreover, the missing cut piece of mosquito netting deepened the mystery. Forensic analysis revealed no traces of male biological material on Stacy's body, challenging the initial theory. The pathologist confirmed that the wooden rifle was indeed the murder weapon.
It had been used to repeatedly strike Stacy in the head, swinging it like a club or a baseball bat. She died of multiple blunt traumatic blows to the left side of her skull. There were at least 3 blows.
Every clue in this case only made the truth harder to find. The absence of defensive wounds suggested that she may have been caught completely off guard and unable to resist her attacker. All possible evidence from Stacy's room was carefully collected by crime scene investigators. At that time, DNA analysis wasn't commonly used, so they were unable to analyze the blood samples or other potential biological traces. Every piece of evidence seemed to deepen the mystery rather than solve it. To make matters worse, no fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. It appeared the perpetrator had wiped it clean with a towel. Despite the lack of concrete leads, detectives still clung to the hope that forensic experts might uncover something in the room to point to her killer. They decided to take fingerprints from everyone who could theoretically have entered the women's dormitory. But this proved to be a daunting task. The investigation now faced a maze of complexities, each dead end more confounding than the last. The police had to interview hundreds of male university students, asking them to volunteer their fingerprints. They also took prints from all male staff members. The issue was that only female students lived in this residence, and a special key was needed to enter the building. Men could only gain entry by being led in by residents or college employees with a key. However, female residents frequently invited their boyfriends and male friends over, which meant the officers had to spend a significant amount of time collecting fingerprints from many individuals. Even after extensive effort, the investigation hit a frustrating dead end. No matching prints were found at the crime scene. It seemed as though every promising lead led to a brick wall and left the detectives with unanswered questions. The detectives took a closer look at the events leading up to Stacy's tragic death. What had begun as a seemingly ordinary night had spiraled into a nightmare no one could have foreseen. On October 7, 1985, Stacy attended a training session for the marching band after school, met up with her boyfriend Tommy Osborne, and went to a campus party at night. She returned to the dormitory with her friends at 12:30 a.m. They talked for a while in her dormitory before Stacy went to bed. At 2:30 a.m., her roommate Amy Wheeler arrived back at the dormitory after the party. However, she'd lost her keys and had to knock on the door. The room was designed for 2 people, so only Stacy could have opened the door. But there was no response. Amy waited for a few minutes, then decided to knock on the door of the adjacent room. The dorm rooms had a common bathroom shared between the 2 rooms. A 21-year-old student named Stephanie Alexander lived next door. Awakened by the knocking, Stephanie opened her door. Both girls were puzzled by Stacy's lack of response, so they entered her room together. Little did they know they were about to stumble upon a scene that would shake them to their core. As Amy entered, she saw Stacy lying on her bed, but something seemed off about that dark room. One of her legs was hanging off the bed. A sense of dread crept over her. What Amy saw next would haunt her forever. As Amy approached, she was horrified to see blood on the bed. The sight was so horrific it felt like a surreal nightmare. She was overcome with shock and ran out of the room to get help.
The first thought in my mind was, I'm going to run outside and get help. But then I thought, well, if someone's out there, they're going to hurt me. I went to the friends upstairs. I banged on the door and I told them that someone killed her.
Her screams were so loud that it alerted other students, and the dormitory guard quickly called 911. Investigators soon arrived at the scene and began to collect evidence. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at the dormitory had already deteriorated into a state of alarm and dread. In an instant, the campus went from a place of learning to a landscape of fear. Panic quickly spread amongst the college students. The female residents in particular were terrified and feared they could be the next target of the unknown assailant. The campus, once a place of safety, had turned into a place of fear and uncertainty. The investigation led detectives to look more into Stacy's background. Stacy was born on September 5, 1967 in Ripley, Mississippi. After graduating from high school in 1985, Stacy enrolled at the Northeast Mississippi Community College, Boonville. With a need for freedom, she opted to live in the dormitory and quickly adapted to college life. Stacy is an active member of the local marching band. Ironically, it was this very wooden rifle that was suspected to be her murder weapon. With no solid leads, investigators turned to a criminal psychologist who crafted a chilling profile of the killer, a man aged 20 to 24 with a strong build and no prior criminal record. The profile indicated that the crime was spontaneous rather than premeditated. The killer had seized an opportunity. This theory cast further doubt on the idea that the attacker had entered through the window, as the hole in the mosquito netting was too small for a large adult man to fit through. Determined to find answers, the officers turned their attention to Stacy's boyfriend, Tommy Osborne. They conducted a thorough search of his room in the boys' dormitory to look for any evidence linking him to the crime.
He did consent to a polygraph. I think he consented to a search. There was nothing in his room of any significance, and he passed that polygraph.
Investigators faced a daunting challenge in determining whether Stacy Pannell's boyfriend Tommy Osborne had any motive for her murder. According to Stacy's friend, the couple rarely argued and had no major conflicts. However, what came next would give investigators hope as they tried to piece together the puzzle of Stacy's tragic end. Stacy's parents revealed a significant detail. Before starting college, she'd been in a long-term relationship with a man named Ben Cox. Despite their past relationship and Ben's hopes of marrying Stacy, she ended things just a few months prior to starting college.
The statements that we were getting from the girls is that he had come over there to try to see her and she would be gone. They said that Stacy wanted to be able to go out with whoever she wanted to.
He told me that he just didn't want to take no for an answer. He tried to give her an engagement ring. He wouldn't take the ring back. He just kept sending it back to her.
Ben continued to pursue her until she left for college, but Stacy remained determined in her decision. Ben's inability to let go created a new lead filled with potential, but lacking clear evidence, detectives interviewed Ben immediately.
They called me, set up a meeting to clear up some stuff, and they just turned on me. They said that they had found hair samples of mine, and they were telling me all this stuff to make me say that I had something to do with it.
He claimed he was asleep at home on October the 7th, 1985, the night of the murder. His mother supported his alibi, stating that he went to bed around 11 p.m. and stayed home the next morning.
My mother worked 3 to 11 shift at the hospital. She was a nurse. She remembered opening my door and seeing me there and on my bed asleep.
Despite this, the investigators considered the possibility that Ben could have left the house unnoticed, traveled to Stacy's college, committed the murder, and then returned home. Ben agreed to take a polygraph test.
I didn't even get my name right on a polygraph test. And I'm listening to this guy up in my face telling me, you know what the punishment for capital murder is? And I thought, these people really think I done this.
Unfortunately, the results turned out to be inconclusive, meaning the operator couldn't determine the truthfulness of his statements, and a second interrogation produced the same uncertain results. As the past collided with the present, the truth remained just out of reach. This left the detectives with growing suspicion, but without concrete evidence they couldn't firmly link him to the crime. Experts attempted to match the hair found on Stacy's bed to Ben, but due to the limitations of DNA analysis at the time, they couldn't reach a definitive conclusion. Ben became a prime suspect, but Stacy's family refused to believe he was capable of such violence. In fact, they even described him as kind and attentive. The lack of solid evidence left the police unable to charge him, and the search for clues continued to be filled with uncertainty. As the investigation progressed, detectives revisited the case materials and stumbled upon a crucial clue. What they found next would turn the entire investigation on its head. While re-examining the cut in the mosquito netting, they noticed a shocking detail.
It appears to me the screen was cut from the inside. You could see where a sharp object was inserted because the fibers of the screen were pointing outward rather than inward.
The fibers were pointing outward, which indicated that the killer was someone who was already inside. A seemingly insignificant detail now cast a dark shadow over the entire theory of a break-in. If the killer hadn't entered through the window, they must have had a key or gained access through one of the residents. Yet this seemed unlikely, as there was a guard stationed near the entrance, who monitored everyone coming and going. After this, months passed, yet there was no significant breakthroughs in the case. Just when the case seemed to hit a dead end, a fresh set of eyes changed everything. In a bid to advance the investigation, the lead detective accepted the help of Stephen Rhodes, who was a sheriff of Illinois. He was renowned for his expertise in neuro-linguistic programming, a method that uses language and thought patterns to detect and understand behavior. His skill in applying NLP also enabled him to extract information from even the most elusive suspects. Rhodes, who was known for his success in detecting deception, agreed to interrogate 4 individuals connected to the case. These individuals were all very close to Stacy: her roommate Amy, her neighbor Stephanie, her ex-boyfriend Ben, and her current boyfriend Tommy. On September the 18th, 1986, Rhodes began interrogation, starting with Amy. She provided a detailed account of what she knew, and he found no reason to doubt her statements. Next, he questioned Stephanie.
At the early stages, she was being very honest. Her body language was expressive. But then she started talking about the time when the murder might have happened.
She claimed she'd taken codeine tablets, an anti-inflammatory pain medication, and gone to bed around 12:30 a.m. She mentioned hearing Stacy and her friends returning to the dormitory and talking loudly, which led her to ask them to quiet down before she went to sleep. But Rhodes's instinct told him something was amiss, and his relentless questioning was about to uncover a startling truth. In a shocking twist, a routine interrogation would lead to a confession no one saw coming.
I asked her to start at a certain point in the day and walk me through your activities throughout the entire evening. At the early stages, she was being very honest. Her body language was expressive. But then she started talking about the time when the murder might have happened. All of a sudden, there was a little red flag. Well, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Her whole style of communication changed just dramatically. She wasn't answering the question anymore. The things she was saying weren't true. She was lying about what she was doing. She was hiding something. Whatever it was, I just wanted to get to the truth.
He pressed her aggressively, accusing her of deception and urging her to come clean. Despite Stephanie's insistence that she was telling the truth, Rhodes's persistent questioning eventually led her to admit that she'd returned to Stacy's room after the friends had left.
It was totally contrary to her saying she'd never seen Stacy and that she'd gone directly to bed. She put herself on the crime scene at the time of the murder.
This admission shocked the detectives, coming nearly a year after the murder. Beneath layers of denial, the next revelation rocked the investigation to its core. In a surprising twist, detectives were shocked by what they heard next.
She looked at me and she goes, "You can read my mind, can't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." And she goes, "Then you know I did it."
He said, "You need to come in here." And I asked him why. He said, because the girl sitting in the room is the one that had killed Stacy. I sat there for a minute and I said, "What did you just say?" She had been interviewed time and time and time again, and she was always helpful. She had even called and wanted to know how was everything going on in the case.
During a tense pause in the questioning, Stephanie confessed how a seemingly innocent chat spiraled into something out of a nightmare. Stephanie told the detective that she'd entered Stacy's room for a normal chat. The conversation soon shifted to Tommy Osborne, Stacy's boyfriend. Stephanie claimed that she had complimented Tommy, commenting on his looks by saying he was fine. These comments, according to Stephanie, seemed to provoke Stacy's anger, as she became visibly jealous and upset. When Stacy demanded that Stephanie stay away from Tommy, their conversation escalated into a heated argument. The situation quickly turned violent when Stacy slapped Stephanie, and she responded by slapping her back. She alleged that Stacy warned her, saying, "I'd better not see you hanging around him. I'll kill you, do you hear me?" According to Stephanie, Stacy then slapped her again and began to choke her. The argument turned violent, and what was meant to be a casual chat ended in a deadly confrontation. In the chaos, Stephanie grabbed the wooden rifle, and from there things turned into unimaginable horror.
Stephanie hit Stacy with a band rifle and knocked her down on the bed. Stacy got back up. At that point, she says, "I hit her again and again. I kept hitting her." She had admitted to hitting her at least 4 times.
Then she revealed a side of Stephanie no one expected. In a fit of fear and aggression, Stephanie continued to hit Stacy with a wooden rifle until she lay motionless. Realizing the gravity of her actions, Stephanie's panic set in. She locked the bedroom door, washed the blood off her hands, and carefully staged the scene to suggest a break-in and attack.
She cut the screen and actually tore the right side of Stacy's panties and pulled them down to her lower left knee.
She then cleaned the bloody wooden rifle with a towel and took a shower to cleanse any remaining traces of blood. Desperate to eliminate any remaining evidence, Stacy burned her t-shirt and the cut piece of mosquito netting in the bathroom, masking the smoke's odor with heavy perfume. After covering her tracks, Stephanie returned to bed, only to be startled awake when Amy's knocks on the door disturbed her sleep. The detectives were stunned by Stephanie's confession. For an entire year they'd been searching for a man, never imagining the killer could be a woman, let alone one of Stacy's dormitory neighbors. In 1985, Stephanie's arrest and subsequent charge for Stacy's murder brought the case to a dramatic climax. Just 3 days after her arrest, Stephanie penned a letter to her new boyfriend, whom she'd been seeing for just a week.
Let me share with you a letter that you wrote to your boyfriend, Randy.
I'm not going to talk about that.
All right, but this is critical.
I am not going to talk about that. I just will not talk about that.
In this letter to your boyfriend, you say, well, Randy, I killed her. I didn't mean to, but I did. It was an accident. Why would you write that to your boyfriend if that weren't true?
They told me to say that because they said if I said I did it in self-defense that they would help me. I can understand why that would be confusing to people to understand.
Confusing isn't the word I would use. It's hard to believe.
In the letter, she detailed the events, claiming the murder was an accident. She mentioned that she'd taken energy pills on the day of the incident, which clouded her judgment. Stephanie insisted that she didn't even recall the murder itself, but had been haunted by nightmares throughout the year. However, the case took another unexpected twist when Stephanie revealed even more shocking details. She alleged that Stephen Rhodes had used his interrogation techniques to hypnotize her and implanted the confessions in her mind.
How come you told him that stuff if it wasn't true?
I was scared.
Scared of what?
What they would do to me.
She claimed that she could not have committed the crime and accused the police of exploiting her vulnerable state to close the case. According to Stephanie, the energy pills had impaired her judgment and made her susceptible to Rhodes's influence. In 1987, a judge convened a 3-day hearing to assess the validity of Stephanie's claims. The detectives firmly denied any undue pressure or hypnotic manipulation. They pointed out that Stephanie's confession revealed unsettling details only the true murderer would know. Despite Stephanie's claims of manipulation, this detail seemed to tie her to the crime. Most notably, she disclosed the precise location of the knife used to cut the mosquito netting, information that only the killer would know. This crucial detail cast a dark shadow over her claims and raised serious doubts about the validity of her latest allegations. Although the knife had not been found during the initial investigation, it was discovered in the closet under a pile of clothes only after Stephanie's confession. Nonetheless, there were complications. The girls were neighbors and frequently entered each other's rooms, which could explain Stephanie's knowledge of the knife's location. Furthermore, there was no definitive evidence linking the knife to the net's cutting. Despite these nuances, the judge concluded that Stephanie's original confession had not been obtained through hypnosis or manipulation. The trial began in 1988 with the prosecution presenting their case against Stephanie. This trial turned into a battleground of conflicting evidence and controversial claims where every detail mattered. But Stephanie's lawyers quickly highlighted the lack of concrete evidence against their client.
He argued that Steve Rhodes comes in with his neuro-linguistic interrogation technique, which they said also was a form of hypnosis, that Steve Rhodes suggested details of the crime to Stephanie.
Rhodes took the stand for the prosecution and claimed that one could detect lies by observing subtle eye movements. But Stephanie's attorneys contested that such methods lack scientific validity and were inadmissible in court. They also presented medical evidence suggesting that Stephanie's cognitive abilities might have been impaired by the energy pills, which could have made her more vulnerable to manipulation. On the other hand, the prosecution conducted a courtroom experiment with a psychological sciences expert who attempted to hypnotize Stephanie.
She was basically a very good hypnotic subject. What it means to be a good hypnotic subject is that a person is suggestible, easily influenced by other people to believe things that may or may not be true.
I took everything that he said to me, put it in a fashion I made up a lot of it.
Furthermore, during their testimonies, the victims' relatives shared concerning information. They testified that Stephanie was a problematic individual, and Stacy had even expressed fear towards her. But alas, on January 25, 1988, Stephanie was sentenced to 20 years in prison following a 3-week trial that ended with a verdict of involuntary manslaughter. She served 9 years of her sentence before being released on parole. Even after her conviction and years behind bars, Stephanie's struggle for innocence was far from over, leaving numerous questions unresolved. Despite her release, Stephanie continued to assert her innocence and enlisted new lawyers to reinvestigate the case.
I have decided to speak with you today because I want my side of the story to be told. I did not kill Stacy Diane Pannell.
What happened then when you sat down with him?
I came in and he just started with a normal set of questions like, tell me your name, how old you are, that kind of thing. Not even necessarily me, just somebody. They had to get somebody on this crime.
Investigators say you confessed to killing Stacy Pannell, that you walked them through the crime step by step.
No, ma'am, that's not true.
What's in it for police?
They had pressure from the school to solve the case. They needed to find somebody and need to find them now.
However, this was far from the end of the case. As Stephanie continued to maintain her innocence, her new legal team uncovered unsettling new evidence that cast a shadow over the original verdict. They discovered a chilling connection with another murder that occurred in 1993. The case involved a man named Charles Ray Crawford who had attacked a girl living just 40 minutes away from the Northeast Mississippi Community College, the very same institution Stacy had attended. What made this discovery even more alarming was that Crawford had also gained entry to his victim's home by cutting a hole in the mosquito netting. The parallels between the cases were striking and deeply troubling. Stephanie and her lawyers now claim that Charles Crawford might have been responsible for Stacy's murder, a theory that has raised more questions than answers. Crawford, who was arrested in 1993 and sentenced to death, now loomed as a sinister figure in this already complex mystery. The challenge in proving Charles Crawford's guilt in Stacy's case was significant, primarily due to the absence of direct evidence. However, crucial developments began to emerge. Stephanie's lawyers uncovered that the wooden rifle found at the crime scene contained a drop of blood that did not match Stacy's.
I determined that it was human blood that was different from the blood that I analyzed for Stacy Pannell. So immediately that tells me that's not Stacy Pannell's blood. That's blood there that was never identified.
At the time, DNA analysis was not conducted as case review was necessary to advance further. Moreover, the victim's underwear was sent to an independent expert who successfully extracted a DNA sample from an unidentified male. The sample had yet to be compared with Crawford's DNA due to the ongoing need for a comprehensive case review. While this evidence hinted at a possible link to the murder, no definitive connection had been established. The mystery surrounding Stacy's death continued to deepen, leaving many unanswered questions. Stephanie's lawyers highlighted several facts to support Crawford's potential involvement. Years prior, during the legal proceedings for Stephanie's case, the lawyers noted that Crawford lived near the college at the time, and 2 witnesses allegedly saw him near the campus days before the murder. However, there was no reliable confirmation of the sighting. Despite the similarities between the 2 crimes, there were discrepancies. The cut in the mosquito netting was made from the inside the room outwards, ruling out the possibility of an intruder entering from the street. Moreover, Crawford's height of 6'1" made it improbable that he could fit through the small opening. Another contentious point was the use of Stacy's wooden rifle as the murder weapon. If Crawford had indeed intended to kill Stacy, it seemed unlikely that he would have used a weapon that was not his own. At present, Stephanie and her lawyers continue to seek a case review to enable the comparison of the evidence with Crawford's DNA. Crawford remained on death row and even spoke with detectives regarding Stacy's case before his death in April 2021. Despite these conversations, the police could not confirm his presence near the college on the night of the murder. As we wrap up the unsettling story of Stacy Pannell, the mystery still lingers. Despite someone being held accountable, it's hard to shake the feeling that something just doesn't add up. Was true justice served, or was this just a case of someone being pinned for the crime to close the file? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss an episode. Until next time, take care and stay safe.